And we welcome back. We're joined by Richard Skinner of Local12.com and our Bengals beat reporter. But Skinny, we're going to start in the college basketball ranks.
As we should,
because as it sits right now, 1 week until Selection Sundays. So we'll start with UC rounding out their regular season today with a big win over East Carolina. I know they're the bottom of the AAC, but it's always good to have a little bit of momentum heading in.
It is. I mean, they were only, I think, a 2-point favorite, so it was fairly a toss-up game. And look, UC hasn't beaten anybody impressively from a point perspective. The fact that they've won the way they've won is still impressive. I mean, they end up getting the number 5 seed. That does put you in line to play the 4-5 game eventually, and then the 1 seed. But I think they got a puncher's chance. I know we can look and go, boy, avoid Houston at all costs if it comes to it. Hey, that game was a buzzsaw. It's one game, and I've always done this before. You can compare scores throughout a season, and this occurred back in 1981 or 82, where you literally, when Kentucky was really, really good back in the Joe Hall days, you could trace it back. I think it was 14 degrees of separation to where Thomas More College at the time was better than Kentucky because they had beaten somebody who beat somebody who beat somebody. So you can do all that other stuff. I like their chances. I think they did a great job to kind of push that game to the wayside. I do think at the end of the day between Houston and Memphis are the two teams to beat, but I like UC's chances.
Year 2 under John Brannon. I know we're probably giving a mulligan for most coaches in this, but how would you grade year 2 and how he's handled this whole program?
I know fans are obviously not happy with the fact that they're not going to make the tournament without winning the AAC tournament. The fact you had some guys through attrition leave the program, and some of it through not his fault. Maybe none of it's his fault. It's just the way things are today. But I think the fact that he kept things together and they kept fighting for each other and for him speaks volumes. He'll get the recruiting part right. He'll get the roster right. I'm a big fan of John's, and maybe I'm clouded by that in a lot of ways. I've known him for a long time. I covered him back in high school, for goodness sakes. But I think he's done a good job. It's unfortunate the way things shook down, but they could have folded 10 and ended up winning 3 or 4 games this year, and they didn't.
You mentioned the future's looking pretty good, at least a couple of young guys like Madsen and Davenport playing well. What is a successful run in the AAC tournament?
I think at least winning the games that you should win, and there's not many of them as the 5 seed, and then maybe pulling one upset. You do anything more than that, it's gravy to me. Because again, it's not like they're fighting to get in the tournament. It's not like they're fighting to, as far as winning a game or two. They have to win the whole thing. You win the game you should win, and then maybe pull an upset. That would be pretty exciting, I think, and get us through the week, at least if you're a UC fan.
Now, Xavier, on the other hand, after the Creighton upset, we thought, oh yeah, no problem, they're in. No. As it stands today, after losing their regular season finale to Marquette, X, in or out?
I think they're still in. Bracket Matrix still has them in. They're not the be-all, end-all. They're not the people making the decisions, but it is a compilation of a lot of people's bracketology. I think there were 2 teams below them going into today, which puts you very squarely on the bubble. I would say this, you obviously can't lose your first game of the Big East tournament. You probably have to win at least 2 games, and you may even have to go to the finals of the Big East tournament. At this point, you're talking about literally backing in, Chris. I mean, that's what you're talking about, is you had everything in front of you that you could have done on your own, and you failed to do. I feel sorry for Xavier fans, but at the end of the day, as a team, you blew your opportunity. Now you better go fight for the chance to get in, and I just don't see it. The Creighton win, I thought that was one where they took a stand. They said, we're getting in, and it showed me that, hey, now there's 2 winnable games against Georgetown and Marquette, and they laid an egg in both, and that's disappointing.
It seems like this Xavier team, they have the talent. They have some big-name guys, and if you did the paper test, you look at the names like, hey, this should be a good team, but they've been so inconsistent day to day. Who's the person you think in this tournament that really needs to be the key guy to carry them?
It has to be Paul Scruggs. I mean, it just does. He and Zach Freemantle were selected 2nd team All Big East today, and Paul is a 1st team All Big East level player. So is Zach Freemantle, in my opinion. I think that speaks volumes, unfortunately, because I think they're both 1st team level players that they didn't attain that. But I think it's Paul Scruggs, and Zach Freemantle's a close 2nd. And that's the thing. There is enough talent to carry them deep into this tournament. This isn't the Nova of years ago where you just went, nah, nobody's beating them. The team that's scary is UConn. But really, other than that, again, same thing with UC. I look and go, there's nobody really scary. Houston, obviously, in the AAC is, and Nova's the best team in the league. But I still think if Xavier plays its best game, it's as good or not better than anybody in the league.
All right, prediction. How far does X make it in the Big East?
Yeah, they're in the same boat. At the rate they're going, maybe win a game. I just don't see much more than that because they just have not been very good offensively of late. It's been brutal.
Travis Steele says he loves this team. He'd go to battle with them all day. Like I said, paper test, but you got to see it on the court. Going out to Goodyear now, the Reds, I know I've said this many times, you don't overreact to spring training.
However, but everybody does.
However, at that same time, the first weekend of Cactus League play, the Reds are 1-5.
You better not get off to a 1-5 start when it matters. So let's get the 1-5 start or 1-6 or wherever this goes to out of the way. Obviously, none of that part matters. It's the evaluation process. And listen, they've started a couple guys. Brandon Finnegan, who probably won't be here, and he actually pitched well in his couple of innings. Hunter Green, who won't be here. He'll be in the minors. They started Noe Ramirez, a reliever. So they've done some of that stuff. And it's been literally shortstop roulette every single day. It's been a different guy. I do and I don't like the way they're doing this. Hopefully after about 2 weeks of this, they settle on, hey, here's our 2 guys. Let's get them at bats and let's go. But it seems like it's been 5 guys fighting for that 1 or 2 spots, and you get a shortstop start and then a DH start. I don't know if that's the best way to do it. I think he's trying to be fair with it. He's trying to evaluate all of it. But yeah, I'm not going to overreact to spring training. I mean, Sean Doolittle today was awful. I think he still has a place on this roster, so I'm not going to overreact to his bad performance today out of the bullpen. It was bad.
All right, don't overreact.
I
said it, Skinny said it.
I know, and I'm going to probably say that at 1-7 in the regular season, Chris, so hopefully not.
You mentioned the shortstop. It's been the shortstop roulette.
Yep.
We don't know who. Who in your mind has anyone jumped out to be the favorite?
No. Kyle Farmer's not done anything to hurt himself, so it's not like he started 0 for 9 with 5 strikeouts and booted 3 balls. So that's a good thing, I guess. D. Strange Gordon's the most interesting one because you're asking him to go back to a position he hasn't played regularly in 7 or 8 years. And that's all well and good if it's a year or two and you're 24 years old. Now you're in your pushing 30-ish plus, trying to go back to a really demanding position and be the everyday player. I'll be honest, I think when push comes to shove, I think you will wind up with a platoon of D. Strange Gordon and Kyle Farmer. And then I know that means, Kyle Holder, they got in the Rule 5. I don't know what they do with him at that point. Obviously, I guess you could keep him on the roster as an extra backup infielder maybe, but I think that's where you're going to with this. But I hopefully the last 2 weeks we go, here's our guys, let's see how they do.
The interesting name that's really come up, and David Bell spoke very highly of him and other players as well, is Jonathan India. I know he hasn't been around a whole lot, only selected a couple of years ago. What are the odds you think that he could potentially crack that? Because he has been playing pretty well.
Yeah, I don't see that. I think he still would have to play it every day. He's been kind of a third baseman for the most part. I mean, that's what they drafted him as. He struggled early in his minor league career at the plate. Obviously, they drafted him high for a reason. I don't see that yet. The guy I think that is going to benefit when all is said and done is when you put Jose Garcia down in the minors and let him get confidence in minor league at bats. Because glove-wise, he's probably the best guy. He was just overmatched at the plate last year when he had to be played. I think he's the guy that warrants the most look at this year. I mean, we might get to July, and he's tearing it up in the minors, and you go, okay, kid's got it. He's figured it out at the plate. We know he can play major league shortstop defensively. He's our guy. Or maybe Kyle Farmer and D. Strange Gordon just jump off the planet at us, and they bat a combined 275 and do great things. I just don't feel great about that.
Is the Reds shortstop, because they've continued to be rumored to trade for guys.
I know where you're going.
Is their shortstop in camp on the roster right now, or is it going to be somebody else?
It's funny you say, before camp started, that was one of the 3 major questions I said, and that's exactly how I phrased it. Is the Reds shortstop on the roster? I'm going to say yes now, but when I wrote that right before camp started, I didn't think it was. I think they're really going to try to sort this out. But then the question is the Reds shortstop on the roster that will be there if they're making a playoff run? And the answer to that's probably no.
All right, we'll switch to the Bengals right now. Things are starting to heat up. Getting close. March 17th, free agency starts. But the big news, I guess, of the week was B.J. Finney getting released. I guess now we can say grade the Carlos Dunlap trade?
Yeah, and I think when they did the B.J. Finney trade, it was a complete – they knew what they were taking on from a salary perspective. Now, they did need some interior offensive line help at that point, and then they got some guys healthy coming off, through the bye week, and he kind of got shuffled off to the wayside. But I think primarily that was literally – we know what we can do from a salary cap perspective in the 2020 offseason, 2021, going in this season. And they saved, 3.2 mil, 3.4 mil, whatever it was, that they saved and let him go. I think they had that plan all along. If he could have helped, great. That would have been gravy to it. But I think that's all that deal was, hey, give us that guy that we can cut next year and save some money on the salary cap. And I think that was probably a shrewd move when all was said and done. And I think you're going to see here in the next I know people have talked around the league about it being a bloodbath. I think this week's you're going to see some probably big names go. I'd be stunned if Geno Atkins at some point is not let go, if Giovanni Bernard maybe isn't in that group. You're going to have a handful of guys that they're going to let go to save some salary cap money. And that's on top of the fact that they've got salary cap room as it is. I think if they can do some of this stuff, they free up a bunch of money to go play in the offseason.
So do you expect them to be big spenders? We saw them last year.
I do. Yeah, and I know that backfired, right? Because Trey Waynes got hurt, then DJ Reader 5 games in gets hurt, and you signed those guys to really big deals, and that was disappointing. But they also found a couple. I mean, Josh Bynes was a good solid signing, not a great signing. I do expect them to do some of those things, whether it's to re-up, and some of it may be, franchise tag Carl Lawson, that's going to cost you some money, or sign him to a long-term deal, it's going to cost you some money. Extend Jesse Bates, it's going to cost you some money. But I do think that even doing some of those things, you are going to be able to be an active player in the free agent market.
We saw Ricardo Allen, a defensive back, come in and visit with the team. Now, defensive back, probably not the position everyone's expecting them to be spenders in. Yeah. Where do you think they'll spend most?
Yeah, I mean, if they don't on the offensive line, I think it's clear that they're going draft, and I just can't foresee them saying we're going to plug a rookie into the starting lineup and go. I just can't see that. It'd be a nice added value if that's the case, but they have to spend at least on one offensive lineman. If it's overspending to get one guy to fill a hole and figure out the rest, that's fine. It'd be nice if you spent for an interior and a tackle to do that. Bobby Hart could also be a casualty too. I think he probably will be from a salary cap perspective. So whether you liked him or not, he still was your starting right tackle. So you still need to fill that void. I think that's the spot they go to. Yeah, bringing Ricardo Allen, I mean, they're probably going to let, Sean Williams is gone as a free agent, so that's maybe a depth guy, but they'll probably go to the draft for that, or maybe even go to the secondary free agent market. I do think they are going to spend money on the offensive line. I'd be stunned if they don't.
It'd be ridiculous if they don't.
Correct.
And if I'm Joe Burrow, maybe I sit out a couple extra weeks of rehab if they don't do anything on that offense.
My knee isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, a couple more weeks on the bench. Yeah. When you mentioned there's so much going on with this draft, where they are at 5, Penei Sewell, obviously the big name that a lot of people want, but now, granted it's draft silly season, they're talking receiver, they're talking tight ends. Do you put any clout into, we could get a weapon instead of offensive line? Or do you think it's offensive line?
No, I'm a big believer in the weapon. That's where I listen. I did a piece right before the last 8 teams were in the playoffs, and literally mapped out the fact that of the 40 starting offensive linemen, there were only 6 guys that were first-round draft picks. Everybody else on every other team was either signed as a free agent from somebody else or was a mid-level draft pick that they kind of developed their own. I think you have to go get guys with proven NFL tape and plug them in. If you get a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round that pans out, great. But you can't spend the 5th pick on a hope. You can't spend the 5th pick on, this kid didn't play in college last year. He might be the next Anthony Munoz on tape, and he might be the next. Not for me. I want proven tape. And so for me, if Joe Burrow goes to you and goes, get me Jamar Chase, and let's just get us another weapon.
Speaking of weapons, a local one now available, Kyle Rudolph. Not the Pro Bowler we've seen in the past, but reunion maybe, bringing him home. What do you think?
I don't see it, only because there's a possibility they cut C.J. Uzomah for salary cap reasons too. That sounds like it opens the door, but I think if they do that, it shows that A, they're comfortable with Drew Sample and the guys behind him, and B, the tight end just has not been a major focal point of the Zach Taylor offense of these last 2 years. Some of it is, because C.J. Uzomah got hurt, and Drew Sample isn't quite the quality receiver, and Tyler Eifert you could only put in as a receiver for the most part. He couldn't be an inline blocker at the stage he was at in his career, so you had to do a lot of mixing and matching, but I just don't see in this offense that the tight end being a key part. Maybe if you got him on a team-friendly deal and there was nobody else in the open market, but I think he's going to find himself a suitor that's going to pay him.
At least get him a Super Bowl ring before his career's
Good
over.
Call.
And finally, the big news of the day, we saved the best for last. Uniform Watch 2021. Of course, these images leaked on eBay. Are you putting any clout into that? These are the uniforms that the Bengals are going for.
And if they are, they're awful. That's what I'm going to start with that. If they really are, they're awful. I don't. I just can't see that. I think there's a couple other teams that are doing some retro ones as well. The Browns, I want to say the Cardinals, and supposedly they got leaked. I'm not buying this. It sounds like somebody on eBay is trying to make a fast buck on some level. I know they say NFL official jersey. That's fine, and then maybe they are. But, you got all kinds of knockoffs all around. I'm not buying it. Again, if they are Bengals, you better do better than that.
Skinny, not a fan of the uniforms. Who knows? We'll see the stripes at some point,
That's a good point. New stripes, baby.
New stripes. Richard Skinner, Local12.com, our sports beat writer. Appreciate it, Skinny.
You bet.